What's up, everyone? So, in this video today, I basically want to be going through the two different types of upselling and how to execute them correctly, right? So, I think the best place to start, honestly, will just be what the actual goal of upselling is. And I know this is a bit self-explanatory, but I feel like it's necessary to kind of set the stage for my explanation here. So, the goal is obviously to make more per customer, as in the average order value or the spend per head. Give the customer also a better experience from upselling, and in that case, also have the secondary effect of increasing customer retention. And since that is the case, that the secondary basically implication of upselling is that you give people better experience and therefore increase the retention of your customers, is actually where I also want to be starting with here. Right. So obviously we've got a little diagram of upselling here, a little waiter upselling this gentleman over here. And there's basically two paths you can take with upselling initially. Right. And I think this also applies just in regards to your personality, who you are as a business owner, and the way in which you want to run your business. So the first path is, firstly, you can come with the intention of just making quick cash, burning customers, basically then at that point having a lower likelihood of staff consistently doing it because they feel like they're gouging customers. And this is where you're kind of just doing it to get more money out of each person, right? That's your intention. And if that is your intention, then this is the likelihood of what you're actually going to be experiencing after that. So those are the secondary consequences, if we are looking at this from a short-term perspective. But if you look at it from a more long-term perspective, a more holistic approach, the way in which you could be doing it is using the rule one here, which is the first rule which I want to introduce in regards to upselling and how you should be approaching it, which is the mindset. And I think this is the most important because it sets the framework for not only you as a business owner approaching it in your business and how you structure things, but also how your staff actually executes on it. So the intention should be to to basically upsell customers by giving them a better experience, right? Whether that's a drink, sauce, side, whatever, and it should be because it makes the experience more enjoyable, right? Basically, what that would mean is, like, for example, let's just say you've got you've got a steakhouse, right? And a customer has basically ordered a steak and they've ordered a side, and they haven't ordered any sauces or anything, but that with the 300-gram sirloin, this blue cheese sauce goes excellently well with that, right? And it would make their experience so much better, also increasing the customer attention, make sure they have a better time at dinner with everyone else that's surrounding them. And so therefore, with that intention, you go and say, you know what, I would really highly suggest you get our blue cheese sauce. It's homemade every single day, and I think it just would go really excellently well with your medium rare sirloin steak that you ordered, right? So that's the first thing, rule or the mindset. Then the second thing is the effect of that, right? Because obviously, if you're taking it from that point of that kind of intention, you're not going to be having the effect of burning customers, your staff not being wanting to actually upsell people because they just feel like they're gouging money out of them. The effect would actually then be customers don't feel like they're being used. It gives them a unique experience they can't get anywhere else, right? Especially have a good USP. And it is also seen as genuine hospitality and improves the perception of the actual service itself. Because now, even though obviously the effects are that you make more money from the customer, you're also enhancing their experience by suggesting things that could do that for them, right? Which obviously just shows higher level of service, education of staff, and just quality in general, right? So that's the first thing, the first foundation. The second one is now how to actually, I guess, execute on that and educate your customers to give them a why, right? The reason you want to actually be able to educate customers and give them a why when you are upselling them is twofold. When you take the time to educate a guest on an upsell, you get them excited, provide more depth, and in turn provide more depth to their experience and add perceived value, right? Basically, in this, you want to be using words that evoke emotion. And the second point, the final point here that I want to add is that upselling without education is just an ask, right? And that again comes down to the intention, which we spoke about here. Now, what I'm basically saying here is that, first of all, if you give someone a reason as to why they should do something or why you are suggesting something to them, they have a way higher likelihood of actually doing so. So this is actually a concept a lot of people have gotten from a man called Robert Cialdini. I'd highly suggest you read this book. Really good for sales, hospitality, anything like that. Especially this one here, 50 scientifically proven ways to be persuasive. His book, yes, New York Times bestseller, absolute golden book. Definitely recommend. But basically, one of the concepts he talks about here is that And I'll just read this for you just so you can understand. He said, "On my trip home from Dreamforce in San Francisco, I was standing in the longer than usual security line at SFO, patiently waiting my time, when I heard a lady asking people if she could cut in the line because she's going to miss her flight. As she moved along, I noticed that her ability to pass people rapidly accelerated as she progressed, and she was through security in no time. Once past security, she turned and yelled, 'Thank you, kind humans.' Now I knew, having read Robert Cialdini's Influence book many times and having had the opportunity to study with him in Phoenix, that she was able to blow through the extra long line for several reasons, right? And the main one here is request plus reason. First, she didn't just ask to cut in line, she added, 'because I'm going to miss my flight,' to the request. Cialdini, the author, refers to this as a request plus reason and has proven that this is significantly increases the possibility of a positive outcome when asking for something, right? And I think you can probably attest to this as well in your daily life. When people give you a reason as to why they'd like to do something or why they'd like to have something from you, it gives you way more you're way more inclined to actually do so, right? I mean, if someone asks you for money, if they straight up just say, "Hey man, can I borrow, $200?" You're probably going to ask why anyway. So you might as well start off with the actual education and the reasoning behind it and give people a good reason to actually listen to you. So, and that's what this is. The second effect that this also has is that when you educate customers, for example, maybe you're educating them on better cheese and wine pairings if you have a cheese board or something like that, right? That is something they will take for the rest of their lives and they can use even in their daily life when maybe they're hosting a dinner party or something and they're thinking of pairings for their guests, right? You've added value to their experience, which they will never forget about. That's what you want to be doing here when you're upselling. You're giving them a reason why, and you're enhancing their experience because you're showing how educated you are and what you're actually giving to them. Obviously, giving them some kind of initial value as well, right? And lastly, here, I just want to kind of make sure that this hits home. Upselling without education is realistically just an ask. Okay. And yeah, the other thing I mentioned here was to use words that evoke emotion. So when you are, I guess, explaining why someone should be using something, or educating them on an item that you want to be upselling them on, like for example, as we mentioned, the blue cheese sauce, you want to make sure that your staff are actually using words that evoke emotion within the prospect, whereby they can actually, while hearing what you're explaining to them, they can envision exactly how it tastes, what the experience will be like, and what that would look like for them specifically, right? Based on what they've ordered already. So, for example, an example here would be try our homemade apple strudel. It has buttery, flaky crust, rich honey glazed apples, and toasted almonds that I have found work perfectly to balance with a scoop of our creamy vanilla ice cream, right? And this is what I mean. And I mean, realistically, I know obviously within the industry at this moment in time, there are a lot of problems with quality of staff, staff shortages, and things of that sort. But these are the small little changes in regards to just genuine hospitality and service that can make that much of a difference to your customer's experience, how much you make from them, and initially also as well, whether or not they're going to come back to the restaurant, right? Because of the great experience and unique experience they have had with you, right? So, in that being said, if most restaurants are having these same problems, if you can just put in the time and effort to train your staff and make sure that they're just that notch, that small notch above the rest, it's such an easy way for you to differentiate yourself from the competitors in the highly saturated hospitality space that we all work in at this point in time, right? Then, thirdly, execution and training. So, obviously there's two places where you usually would be upselling people, right? Or your staff would. Firstly, there's in person, and then there's over the phone, right? So usually over the phone, that might be, a private event or catering or an online order or takeaway. And then in person would obviously be, when you're actually serving customers, whether that's in a QSR setting or where you actually a waiter or a server or even a bartender, right? So just a little tip here that we've gotten from one of our clients, Tez, who's a QSR in London. They're basically what's it called? They serve Indian food, basically modern Indian food in a QSR setting. They're growing really rapidly, really successful restaurant at this point in time. And you can probably see the founder here, Gavir. He's in some of the reels as well, which is quite cool. And they're planning to open 20 locations by the end of the year. So what we found from one of our most successful clients, Tez, is that what they actually do is they role play with their staff at least 3 times a week to perfect this process, making each customer interaction feel naturally and non-pushy, right? Now, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, cool. I don't necessarily want to be role playing certain lines my staff should be using when upselling people, because it is going to feel, staged. It's not going to feel real. It's not going to feel genuine. But the thing is, if your staff has it in the back of their mind of already, when a customer orders this item, or they do this or that, or they ask this question, if they instinctively, because they've role played this situation so many times, know exactly what to say, it's not going to come off in that way. When it does sound non-genuine is when you just simply give them, I guess, a piece of paper or an SOP to follow on how to upsell people. You never practice it with them. They never role play in actual real life scenarios, and you basically expect them to do things without any kind of repetition, right? Which is realistically never going to happen. So this is what they found works best, and also some of our other clients have found this work best, as well as one of our clients, Bar Beach Grill, who owns a sit down, I guess, bar and grill that's Afrofusion based, right? Very similar thing there, because if you can train your staff on knowing in each and every interaction what's going to happen, how to say things, how to explain with emotion, with conviction, things of that sort, using these kinds of words that I spoke about here, using words that evoke emotion, that's where you're going to get the best results and actually differentiate yourself from your competitors, right? But there is three things that you got to make sure that you don't do when you do this, or when your staff do, which is you don't want to bombard them too early in the selling process, as realistically you want to be building rapport, engaging with them naturally, and then from there informing them on basically an upsell that they could take, whether it's a sauce, drink, side, whatever it might be. So, for example, in a reservation setting, you obviously don't want to be upselling them straight off the bat, because obviously you're going to come off as a little bit pushy. And in the QSR setting, maybe you want to just do it later down the line once they've chosen a couple other items that they're looking at from you, right? Then, secondly, as well, don't use blanket phrases. So it usually just comes down to when staff are not educated on the menu itself or any items at the restaurant, which is really common these days. And it's something where they'll basically just say, check the menu and I'll be back. And they basically go and ask the manager about some questions and stuff. Or if someone asks, which item here should I choose? Should I go for this sauce or that sauce, or this side or that side, or whatever else it might be? And then they just say, everything is good here when giving suggestions, right? That's realistically not what you want to be doing. You want to be making it as specific as possible for that customer, and that means that the staff would need to be educated on everything that you sell. Then thirdly, here, really basic one, please just don't give dirty menus. I mean, it's just a bad representation of what you guys do, and it is essentially this physical sales asset you are giving to customers when they walk through the door. Then lastly, here, staff should always keep personal preferences to themselves. They might not want a dessert after a heavy meal, but that does not mean other people will, and it doesn't mean that it wouldn't enhance their experience for them, right? Then lastly, here as well, make sure you compliment guests when they've chosen additional items to prevent buyer's remorse. So a lot of the time, if your staff has upsold someone on an item that's a little bit more expensive or something of that sort, you want to obviously always be giving a compliment, and making sure that they feel assured in the choice that they have made, right? So that's obviously in person and some tips we've gotten there. I'd love to hear your feedback as well. If you've got any tips you've been using in your restaurant, I'm sure other people in the comments could value from that, other restaurant owners. And yeah, let me know what you think of this, guys. Then, secondly, over here, we've got over the phone. Now, obviously, for our clients, the way in which we've kind of solved this problem, because a lot of the time from our experience, we know a lot of restaurateurs are either using you know at sometimes even managers and things of that sort who are handling the phone. Yeah, phone calls get missed. Busy during busy staff hours in the evening and stuff. Phone calls just don't get answered, or they're done in a rushed way, whereby the customer on the other end doesn't feel like they're really, you know, um, being treated with the same quality that everyone else will. And yeah, there's just very little attention to detail a lot of the time when it comes to actual phone calls and service, which in turn obviously affects how well your staff are able to upsell customers, right? So the way in which we've obviously solved this is through Certus AI, which is basically an AI platform that's able to take phone calls. It sounds very natural, and it's able to actually consistently upsell any customers that walk through the door. It knows the entire menu, is educated on everything, knows exactly how to speak to your customers. It's self-learning, things of that sort, right? And yeah, basically, I mean, it's consistently uh, being trained to upsell people with no additional time or money investment from your side. Obviously, then the initial setup, it does need to be consistently trained. It doesn't have bad days. It doesn't get snappy. It learns from every encounter it has, and it's yeah, just basically never gets sick or ask for a raise. So that's basically the system we've implemented there to solve this for a lot of our clients. Now, obviously, you can apply what we've kind of gone over here if you don't necessarily want to do that for whatever reason. And you can apply that to the phone. But we've just found that this is a big time save and money save, as well as just generally adding a lot of value to customers if we're able to do this for them over the phone, right? Then the last thing I kind of want to go over here is I've kind of given you the reasons as to how you should be doing this. The first thing, which was mindset, the intention behind upselling, how to do it, why to do it, and then also the two ways in which you can actually execute on this in training for your staff, which is over the phone or in person. But I actually also want to break down here what the actual math looks like in regards to value added per year, because I know for most restaurateurs when they look at this, they probably just see this as a hell of a lot of work, right? And quite realistically, I mean, quoting Alex Hermosi here, the reason most business owners aren't successful is because they aren't willing to do what those who are successful are, which is basically putting in the hours. So if you are, I just want to paint the picture of what this can look like, because quite honestly, I don't see why restaurateurs shouldn't be making a lot of money, right? Especially when you guys work such long hours, have so much stress and so much crap on your shoulders. I mean, I think you all should just be putting in the hours necessary to make sure you can live the greatest life you possibly could. So let's take a restaurant that's doing around $70,000 dollars a month. The AOV is £25 or $25. Let's just say they get 15 calls a day. With simple upsell on some sauces, drinks, desserts, and starters, they're probably going to upsell $10, as well as obviously how the customer feels in regards to service. With 50% of those calls being takeaways or deliveries, so let's just say of these 15 calls, 7.5 are takeaways or deliveries and not reservations. We can times that by 30 days, which would basically mean 225 orders a month times $10, which would mean 2,250 in new revenue and high profit items, which would mean 27,000 a year in additional revenue, right? And obviously, usually these things are like 50 to 70% markup, right? Which is obviously a lot more profit in a year. And that's only with 70,000 a month, and that's only with 15 calls a day. So just thought I'd paint that picture for you there. I hope you found this valuable. I'll drop this definitely in an email as well, so you guys can check that out. And yeah, hope you have a great day. Cheers.